I don't get it. I don't get it series. That's what it's all about. We've got a second installment, and our topic today is default parenting. So it's kind of an interesting topic for me. It's definitely something I probably spent more time than I should thinking about and wondering about, and as always, I like to give some context, but I also wanted to kick this off because we started as a part of the series, this cool new format that I am officially obsessed with, which is having a discussion group. I'm totally biased. I've got 3 awesome women from our team that are joining in this discussion about default parenting today. They actually come from different situations, right? We've got Brittany, who's been a single parent even before, so I think she can really provide some awesome insight to us about default parenting. Suzanne, who has, I think, how old is your son now? 2, right?
He's 2. He'll be 3 next month.
Ooh, okay. So, a fairly new, youngish-er parent, with her husband raising their son. And then we've got Jacqueline, who will be having another AIS baby here soon. So, having her first child. And then you've got me, the old fogey of the group. I've got 4 kids, my husband and I, but we are in a very non-nuclear traditional situation in terms of how we're raising our children. So, and I think for me, what causes me to pause and go, I don't get it, is the fact that it's 2022 and gender-based roles in terms of default parenting is still very much in play. Like it is, I think, still very much like an understood thing. And if in fact any kind of family, any definition of family exists out there, and it is a family based on children being raised, in any of those situations, it would very much have to be a conversation, like a proactive conversation, for it to not be a default parent situation. And kind of by my definition of default parent is the woman, it is the mother in the situation who the care for children defaults to more often than not, right? So we're talking about things like doctor's appointments, signing field trip forms, like doing clothing stores seasonally, so we make sure our kids are actually in clothes that fit them. Like all these like little yet extremely cumbersome responsibilities that we have as parents and specifically as moms that yet here in 2022 are assumed gender-based roles that we have in parenting. What would it take for there to actually be no default parenting, which means that 100% equality in terms of responsibility of raising children and caring for children for any person who's a part of that parent community? Here's a whole other thing. Maybe there's people here or people that are listening and commenting that will say, no, we think actually there should be gender-based default parenting. Maybe that there's a feeling that should be what happens. And that's okay too. There's no right or wrong here. It's just based on perspectives and sharing them and gaining some understanding. I'll kind of kick it off in terms of my experience. I was raised very much in a super traditional nuclear family that default parenting was hardcore. Okay, there was my mom. She actually, even though she made more money than my dad at the time, she had her bachelor's degree. She was a surgical nurse. It was understood that when my mom had my brother, their second child, that my mom was going to stop working and my dad was going to be working 2 jobs and going to night school, and my mom was going to do everything as the mother in the household minus earning money to take care of the kids. So she did everything. So that was how I was raised. However, they managed to raise a daughter who feels very differently about this. In my family, I am the person who runs a business and I work full time. And my husband is professionally trained and extremely well educated by a psychotherapist. And, we both worked in the early days of our marriage, and we designed our entire schedules around parenting because we didn't agree with any strangers watching our children. So that was something from a values perspective we talked about a lot. But the bottom line is we talked a lot about what we wanted for our children. And we both agreed that this was a 100% equal investment by both of us to be participating in the raising of our kids and what does that mean, and what did we both want? And both of our opinions mattered. And even that being said, my husband comes from a very traditional patriarchal culture, right? So this was, I think, a whole other challenge for him. He's extremely forward thinking. And, it got to a point where over the years, we started to figure that out. And it got to a point where it was like my husband chose to be the full-time parent, and because of that and my respect for it as a woman, I take a very different approach. I look out for him to make sure that he has me with him every step of the way, that he still is not the default parent, that we are still in this together. We're both thinking about doctor's appointments. We're both thinking about signing permission slips. We're both taking care of sick children, that there's no assumptions that one or either one of us, our times are more valuable or important than the other. So love to hear from one of you ladies in terms of what your experiences have been. Just feel free to hop right in.
Well, my experience growing up was in a single parent home. So my mom was, I have two parents, obviously, but, I had my dad kind of in that traditional, like your parents are divorced way, where I spend summers with my dad. And then during the rest of the year, I was with my mom. And so when I first became a mom, I was terrified, but I was really wanting to embrace it. So it was my decision to stay at home. And I don't know kind of if that was a default thing. It was definitely a discussion. A lot of it was around childcare, things like that. So that in a way that my role or my job, if you would be to be the full-time kind of parent. Not to say that my older children's dad was absent, but he went to work full time, and then that was our way of managing financially, time wise, all of that. So I found actually that being just the parent kind of stripped me of my identity in a way. And so I would lean now more towards like what Angela was saying, the communication. So talking with your partner, child's father, or whoever it may be, grandparents, talking and communicating and saying, this is what I want for my children as a family, as a unit that care for the well-being of these children. What do we want to see happen, and how can everybody be fulfilled? And I think that that's a great approach. And I think that's the only way really to achieve, like Angela was saying, equality is just by speaking up and being transparent in what your needs are, and also what you want to see for your children, and just having those open discussions. I re-entered the workforce and everything like, that, and wanting to go back to school and wanting to achieve things outside of just being a good mom. I think just reaching an equality would be, beneficial for parents as individuals and not going to the default style. If I was gonna give it like a range, a percentage, I would say I'm still 80% the default parent. So we're not at full equality, but
it's funny you say that. Like, thank you for being that candid, because especially what has your experiences been in the past when it comes to like going through a separation, right? Like, did you feel like there was an understanding that just because you're separated, it's still 100% equal responsibilities to take care of the kids? Or was their dad feeling like, oh yeah, they've got to do doctor's appointments too, they've got to deal with school stuff too, they've so how was that experience for you?
It's funny because I have two older children, and their father and I, we share 50-50 custody. So we actually legally, we make decisions together. Like we work really well in that way, in co-parenting land, if you will. Like everything is split down the middle, be it time, be it legalities, whatever. So it would just depend, I guess, on where the kids were at during that week, whether it be their dads or at my house. My youngest son, his father is an active duty military. So basically from the get-go, I was a single parent. So he didn't live in the house with us. He didn't, all of the responsibility fell on my shoulders, and that was because of his job. So it's totally different situations, but
Right.
he just wasn't available. And so someone's got to do it. And I'm not in the Marine Corps, you know
Right.
what I mean? So that's kind of like, that's essentially how I
One
feel
of the things,
I got tacked with.
yeah,
100%
one of the things I
responsibility.
wonder is like based on like the gender component to this is like, what if there was a role reversal there? Like, what if you were the military
in the
parent,
military.
you know?
And I
And
don't
what
even
if
know, because I
the
have nobody.
father was, yeah.
That's it. But
Yeah, but
I
I'm
mean,
just saying, like, I
know.
wonder how much that would be affected, the default parenting aspect of
Right.
it. Would everything be expected if the mother was in the military and the father had a full-time job and was home with the kids? Would the father take on everything?
I bet you,
Like, would that be the same situation?
I want to say probably in most cases, no. I would say there would be nannies involved. There would be grandparents.
Yep,
there would be
family members involved.
Yes, yes. I would say in a general sense. I'm sure there are people out there doing it, and
Is that more of like
our
what society has trained us to believe? What has mothers trained? So one of the big things, like the call outs I've had, and I'm curious to get your guys' opinions on this too, is at the end of the day, the people who are the most guilty of men growing up to think that they don't have a 100% equal responsibility in parenting is the mother. Mothers raised their sons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, we've all been guilty. I'm like, obviously Jacqueline can't speak to this yet, but I would tell you that most of my friends and most of the people I know, there is more babying going on of boys.
Yeah.
There is earlier responsibilities and chores put on girls. Us moms are guilty of that, you know? And so but I've always, like, again, when you think specifically about default parenting and gender roles, I look at your situation of thousands and thousands and millions of military spouses out there who are in your situation.
I guess it must be assumed that if you're the mother and you're at home with the kids while, you know, the dad's away, that you don't need help, because I would love help. Send everybody, like,
exactly.
But nobody really is banging down my door to be like, are you okay? Do you need help? I know you got a lot on your plate.
Right.
Like, definitely not like that. And I think that has a lot to do with gender roles.
Thank you for sharing that, Britt. I think it's super enlightening, you know, especially from the experiences that you've had. So that's really, thank you so much for sharing. What about Suzanne or Jacqueline? What are your thoughts?
For me growing up, I would say that my mom was the default parent. And then, so my growing up situation is kind of different because I grew up with my parents together, and then I grew up with them divorced. So I saw both worlds of that. And then I kind of became the default sister parent.
Yeah.
So I think that as me being a mom now, I kind of already took that role, and I need to probably not to try to take on so much and delegate. I would say that I'm the default parent, probably like, 80% too, just because I do take care of daycare and doctor visits, but my husband does help me with like the cooking and cleaning and other things like that. So it's like he works on what he can do, and then I do what I can do, like what we feel comfortable in.
I mean, I think when you kind of like thinking in terms of your experiences since you started working, with our team, and like even what drove your decision in terms of what kind of job you went in, like I think as moms, and I'm Jacqueline, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this too, and about to have a baby, how much our availability to our kids influences our decisions in the work that we do, right? So I know, like, literally I built this entire business on the premises of me being able to access my kids at any time. Working from home, having a flexible schedule. That wasn't just because I was like, hey, it's the right thing to do only. There was definitely some selfish agenda in there for me to be able to have access to my kids. I wonder how much men and fathers take that into consideration. Like, has your husband in any of his job situations said, this job, I really need to consider like how much flexibility they're going to give me with my schedule. Are they going to let me take off when my kids are sick? Like, does that even come into play
Right.
when a father is looking at his job situation?
Right. I know for my husband, weekends are always the most important thing because that's family time. So he does take that into consideration. But unfortunately for his type of work, that's all you're gonna get, So I was very thankful that I found the opportunity with this company, because that was my main priority, was my son. And then especially in the world that we're living in today, I wanted to just protect him and keep him home and in a box.
Well, you know what though, I know Suzanne, on a personal level too. So I also know that she's got phenomenal community around her, in terms of family, and your community in terms of your family are super active in raising children together.
Definitely have a village. I have a village behind me that they want to take care of him, and that's the biggest thing that helps me, is that they want to help me, and I don't really have to ask. I have my aunt and my grandma that they're always there, always to help with him. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So what about you, Jacqueline? I mean, as you hear these conversations, like, have you started having conversations with your partner and thinking about when this baby comes, and like, do you feel like you already see default parenting in the making in terms of decisions around jobs and schedules and responsibilities?
Yeah, so this is something I thought about from like the beginning of my pregnancy, because in the beginning, my boyfriend, we're having our first child next month, he mentioned something about not changing diapers. And I nipped that in the butt right away. I was like, no, you're going to be changing diapers. Like, I don't know what this is that I do all the diapers. But it was that I wanted our parenting to be 50-50. I didn't want it to be like 80-20, 60-40. I wanted it to be completely 50-50. So that was important with me too, also with my career, because I wanted to be working while I was a mom. I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom, but I wanted to have the opportunity to be with my kid and also working, like the same as Suzanne said. So my boyfriend works from home about 70% of the time. So that is something that was important to me, because I appreciate the fact that we will both be able to take care of her while we're also working. And he kind of knows that, like, when I'm working, it's his time to take care of her. Like, let me do my job. And then when he's working, I'm taking care of her. And just making sure we both kind of have that 50-50 going into the parenting. And I wanted to make sure that was kind of established before she's here. So he knows what to expect. He knows he doesn't just get to be the fun dad. Like a lot of men kind of expect, like, we go through the pregnancy and it's like, oh, they get the cute baby and they get to like play with the cute baby, but it's like, oh, mom stays home, or mom does this, mom does that. So it was definitely something that was important for me to establish.
So, I mean, and the key to all of that is, and what's so awesome is, and I'm hearing this from all of you, is, and for myself as well, is communication, right? Like, there's actual conversations happening, prior to babies being in the picture. One of the things that is like the biggest pet peeve of mine when it comes to default parenting is when I hear when fathers are taking care of their children, that they call it babysitting.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
It's called taking care of your child. Okay?
Oh my, there is nothing more annoying to me when I hear that. What it's like, and typically it's actually not in my family, but I hear other dads be like, I got to babysit the kids tonight. I'm like, oh, you're babysitting somebody else's kids? How nice of you.
Can I bring mine over?
Like, no, our kids are like, you ain't babysitting. You're taking care of your children, right? Like, it's oh my God, but that's like one of those, again, default parent, like, programs, societal things. What do you guys think it would take? And I think we've talked about one of them already, which is communication, like a proactive and ongoing dialogue. But what do you guys think it would take from a society perspective for there to be a 100% truly equal responsibility in parenting?
Showing our children at a young age that they need to participate, no matter if they're a boy or a girl. You need to participate in, that goes for like household chores. Like, they're not just for girls, they're for boys too. But just being there and helping out at a young age.
Yeah.
Right. So part of it, the solution is in how we raise our boys.
Just going off what Suzanne said, like, it would be a slow evolution, I think, but it starts with starts with, I guess, showing them while they're young that, it's not just on mom's shoulders, or, make sure, dad can take care of that, or, just like giving them those cues so that when they grow up, it's not like, oh, my mom handled all of that stuff, so you got this, right, honey? Like, they have to see it and grow knowing that it's an equal partnership. Those are both my parents. They both, have a say. So I think it's definitely by example.
It's interesting when my mom immigrated to this country from the Philippines, and then my husband immigrated here from India. And those are two like very traditional cultures when it comes to kind of this, default parenting mentality. But yet both of them had similar experiences that my mom, when she thinks of her childhood, like, and my husband, when they came home from school, who was the parent that received them from school or picked them up from school, who gave them snacks when they came home or helped them with homework or whatever? It was their dads. So interestingly enough, so when you talk about that great example, as they came from very traditional cultures, but then came here to the States, I think that experience helped more form like ultimately what my husband and I were able to build here, which is a very non-traditional situation, So I think that example piece of it is a huge influence as well.
I just feel like overall expectations need to be changed, because I see like husbands and fathers getting praised for doing normal things that are responsibilities. Like they get praised for doing the dishes, or like you guys said, babysitting their kids, which are just typical things you should be doing in your role as a father or husband. But I still see them getting the praise for doing these things. Right. And I feel like that's just not really adding up and making much sense to me. So I do think those expectations need some change.
Right. So just like a shift in behavior, right? To start to normalize a father's involvement in parenting. Like it's just normal. It's normal for you to make a doctor's appointment. It's normal for you to pick up your sick child from school and then take care of them, all day and all night. You guys know I'm a big like into language, like specific language being used. And one of the things that my husband and I gripe on him about hard is the word can you. So it's not can you, it's obviously they can. Again, in terms of normalizing it is really kind of shifting the assumption, right? Instead of it just not being a discussion at all, what if the tables are turned and it's like, so when you make the doctor's appointment for him?
Yes. Yeah. Amen.
Right?
That's what it should. Yeah.
It's not a can you. It's not a can you. It's not a will you. It's okay. Thank you for bringing to my attention that our child's not feeling well. When you make the doctor's appointment and when you take off work to take them to the appointment, and when you stay home and take off work to take care of the child. Do you hear how different that language is? Like what Jacqueline's saying is huge, is like our behavior has to model the normalization, to say if in fact that this is the goal, if in fact we actually think it's right. Because by the way, again, not a lot of people might think this is right. There's a lot of people who go, no, I think it's the role of a mom to be the default parent. And that's okay. If they're happy with that and they're not griping about it and wishing for something different, awesome. Think about all the different situations where it's the assumption is you. Oh, did you see the father says, oh, did you see we got a form for a field trip coming up? Great. And you're like, oh, great. So when you take care of signing the form and putting the money in the envelope and putting the kid's name on the envelope and putting it in their school folder, and when you sign yourself up to go on that field trip, make sure you let me know how everything goes.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's so funny.
Does that feel weird, Britt and Suzanne, to hear it that way?
Yeah, because immediately my brain goes, if I made those sort of assumptions, I feel like society would be like, why doesn't she care about her kids? Like, why doesn't she want to do it? Why does it, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, we are getting into it now.
That's where my brain went. There's the judgment, like that you would feel like somehow you're less of a parent because you expect that the father can do the same things that you can do, like picking up a phone and calling for the doctor when the kid's sick. But it's sad that it goes there, but that's immediately immediately where my brain went.
There's going to be somebody that says, well, why can't she do it? You know, why isn't she doing it?
Yeah, she's the
Because
mom.
she's tired and she needs help.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me though, because like that is where the truth lies when we talk about default parenting being something that is a society-based thing. Women, we have to get out of our own damn way.
Right.
So that's the first thing. Second of all is we've got to not care about judgment coming in from other women, because a lot of times judgment that comes in from other women is found in their brokenness. The very mother that's going to judge you, Brittany, for assuming that the kid's father is supposed to take care of something is the very same woman who's pissed off that that's not her situation. Talk about us challenging ourselves, and if we really want to create change, and if we want to start shifting this towards an actual place of equality, I don't even think it's like asking for fathers to participate as much as women, as much as the mothers do. It's assuming it.
Right.
By the way, assumptions are very different than demands. We're not making demands either. This is your child. You chose to also have this kid. We've got to, in our own language, in our own expectations, in our own behaviors, we've got to stop behaving like default parents.